The forgotten evidence. A silver flash drive hidden inside a 1950s camera. A masked man crashing through glass at midnight. A neighbor who wasn't what he seemed, and neither was anyone else. 13 hours earlier, the rain had been just rain. Ink stains covered Lucy's fingertips as she pried open the mahogany box. The brass latch clicked, a small sound, metallic and final. She lifted the camera, its black leatherette peeling slightly at the edges, worn smooth by decades of hands that were no longer alive to hold it. The Leica the 3G was a beautiful thing, the kind of camera that made photographers weep. Someone had wanted to return it. The rain drummed against the tin roof of her bookstore's back room. A storm was coming in hard from the north, the kind that turned the Vermont hills dark and close. Lucy worked by the warm yellow glow of her desk lamp, the desk itself an old oak thing with too many scratches and coffee rings. Outside, the sky had turned blue-gray, bruised and heavy. She opened the film back of the camera with practiced care. Her fingers knew the mechanism. She'd been restoring cameras for 17 years. She expected to find a spool. Instead, a small silver Kingston flash drive fell out, bouncing once on the green felt of her workbench with a soft thud that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. Lucy stared at it. She picked it up, turned it over in her palm. The drive was warm from having been sealed inside the camera's body. She carried it to her silver MacBook Pro, the one she used for inventory and correspondence, and slid the drive also into the USB port. The machine hummed, as if considering the gravity of what it had just received. A folder appeared on the desktop, Archive 09. She double-clicked. 6 video files populated the window, each labeled with a date code. Move 01 through Move 06. She opened Move 04 at MP4. The video was grainy, shot in low light, a motel room she could tell by the thin walls and the garish geometric wallpaper. A man appeared on screen, and Lucy's breath caught. She recognized him instantly. It was Tom, her neighbor, the widower who had brought her a casserole 3 months ago when Martha died, the man she'd seen every morning for the past 6 years walking his golden retriever down Maple Street. Tom was smiling in the video, his arm wrapped around a blonde woman in a sundress. He was kissing her hand with exaggerated tenderness, the kind of gesture that belongs in bad movies or to men who are pretending. Lucy leaned back in her chair. The wood creaked, a sound like something breaking. She glanced at the framed photograph on her desk, a 4x6 print of her and Tom's late wife, Martha, laughing at a picnic only a year ago. Martha wore a bright red scarf knotted at her throat. Her head was thrown back, her mouth open in genuine joy. That was the Martha Lucy remembered. That was the woman who had brought her cookies every Christmas for 6 years straight. That woman was dead now, had been dead for almost a year. But in the video playing on Lucy's laptop, Tom was with a blonde stranger in a motel room, and he was alive in a way Lucy had never seen him, not once in 6 years. The storm intensified. Rain hammered the tin roof like angry fists. Tom was on his front porch when Lucy pulled into her driveway at 5:30 p.m. He was aggressively jamming a for sale sign into a large wooden planter, his movements jerky and frantic. His face was flushed, almost purple with effort. The sign kept resisting, the soil in the planter dense and packed from the rain. Lucy kept her car engine running. The windshield wipers swished back and forth in their rhythm. She gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went white. In her passenger seat, visible on the floor mat, was the flash drive. She'd thrown it there in a panic before driving. Now it sat there, silver and accusatory. Tom finally got the sign deep enough into the soil to stand without his hands. He stepped back to admire his work. That was when he noticed her car in the driveway. He stopped. He wiped sweat from his brow with a grimy rag. Then he waved, a stiff, unnatural wave, and started walking toward her. Lucy's hands trembled on the steering wheel. She did not turn off the engine. Tom approached the car window, and she forced herself to wind it down. His smile was wide but didn't reach his eyes. Up close, she could see the stubble on his chin, the broken capillaries in his cheeks that hadn't been there before. He leaned his hands on the car window frame, leaning in too close, filling her space with the smell of old cologne and fresh sweat. "Lucy!" His voice was strained cheerfulness, like someone trying too hard at an acting audition. "Didn't see you there. Getting some early spring cleaning done." She reached into her passenger seat with her right hand, fingers closing around the flash drive. She shoved it deep into her coat pocket, the silver rectangle disappearing into the dark fabric. Her breath came shallow. She forced a smile that felt like a grimace. "Just getting home," she said. Her voice was smaller than she wanted it to be. That was when she saw the bruise on his neck. It was fresh, dark against his pale skin, and shaped exactly like a finger mark. Like someone had grabbed him there, hard enough to leave marks. Like someone had been fighting for their life against him. Or he had been fighting for his. "Well, welcome back," Tom said, and his smile widened slightly. "It's a beautiful evening, isn't it? For early April?" Lucy tried to sleep that night. She tried to lie in her bed, to close her eyes, to do any of the things that normal people did when they went to bed at 11 o'clock. Instead, she sat on her sofa with the laptop on her knees, watching the video again, and again, and again. The timestamps on the files showed they were from 18 months ago. 2 videos from the same motel room, one from a parking lot, one from what looked like a warehouse, one from inside a car, one from the entrance to a bank. The 6th video had no date code at all. Lucy was halfway through the second viewing of Move Row 4 when the glass of her sliding back door shattered inward. The sound was catastrophic. An explosive crash that filled her living room like a physical thing. Shards of glass flew across the room like diamonds, like weapons, like tiny pieces of a violated world. They caught the lamplight as they fell, each one flashing gold before hitting the hardwood floor with sounds like distant bells. A heavy black boot stepped through the broken frame. Lucy tried to scream, but the sound got stuck in her throat. A tall figure in a wet black rain slicker lunged at her. The world compressed. Hands closed around her throat, not gentle hands, not negotiating hands, and slammed her against the wall next to her bookshelf. Books tumbled to the floor. A hardcover collection of Whitman's poetry landed spine first, then fell open. The sound of pages ruffling mixed with her strangled gasp for air. "Where is the drive, Lucy?" The man's voice was gravelly, muffled by a black balaclava pulled down over his face. Only his eyes showed, dark and intent. "Give it to me." She couldn't breathe. The pressure on her throat was absolute. She could feel the edges of his palms pressing into her windpipe, feel the ring on his middle finger digging into her skin. Her vision began to tunnel. Her hand found the brass bookend on the shelf beside her head. It was shaped like an owl, its wings spread as if caught mid-flight. It was heavy, so heavy. She swung it. The metal connected with the side of his temple. She felt the resistance of bone, the give of flesh. Blood sprayed across the white wallpaper in a pattern like abstract art. The man's grip on her throat loosened just enough for her to gasp a thin stream of air into her lungs. He kicked her in the stomach. The force lifted her off the ground. She slammed onto her coffee table, and it snapped in half with a sound like bones breaking. Splinters of wood scattered across the floor. All the air left her body. She lay there, gasping, unable to do anything except try to remember how to breathe. The masked man straightened up. In the distance, a siren wailed. Faint, but growing closer. He turned without a word and bolted through the broken door, vanishing into the rain like he'd never existed at all. Lucy lay on the floor, among the splinters and broken glass, her hand clenched around the drive inside her pocket. She could hear the siren now, loud and immediate. She could hear rain hitting the floor inside her house through the broken door. She could hear her own breathing, ragged and terrified, like an animal's. The police arrived 8 minutes later. A large bandage covered Lucy's forehead as she sat in the bookstore office 3 days later. The police had taken a report. They had found nothing. No fingerprints, no witnesses. Nothing but broken glass and a professional quality masked prowler who had vanished into the rain like a ghost. The only thing Lucy had told them was that the man had wanted something she didn't have. She didn't mention the camera. She didn't mention the drive. She was scanning the bookstore's handwritten return ledger, a thing of yellowed paper and careful handwriting, when her finger stopped at an entry. Leica the 3G, returned by Peter Feeve. Peter 5. The customer had filled out no address beyond a street name. Lucy searched the computer database, her finger hovering over the keyboard. The address listed was a vacant lot on the edge of town, the kind of place where weeds grew through cracked asphalt and rusted fences marked the boundary between here and nowhere. She pulled up a Google Street View image. Nothing but desolation stared back at her. Weeds, a rusted fence, a collapsed mailbox. No house, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. It was the kind of address that didn't exist, which meant that Peter V didn't exist either. She opened another video from the drive, her hands moving on autopilot. This one was different. In this footage, Tom was handing a thick brown envelope to a man in a leather jacket. The man's face was partially visible, and Lucy's breath caught again. She recognized him. It was Tom's brother, Elias. She'd seen him only once, at Martha's funeral, standing in the back of the church with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. The audio on the video was clear. "Keep it safe, Elias. They're asking questions." Lucy's finger moved to the trackpad. She paused the video, zoomed in on Elias's face. There was a jagged scar on his chin, an old injury, white against his darker skin. It was distinctive enough that she could never forget it if she saw it again. She closed the laptop. Outside the bookstore window, Maple Street was quiet. The rain had stopped 3 days ago, and spring was trying to break through the gray New England landscape. Lucy sat in the stillness of her back office, surrounded by her inventory, surrounded by other people's stories bound in leather and paper, and tried to figure out what was real and what was an elaborate trap designed specifically for her. Lucy's Volvo crept down a dirt road on the edge of Miller's scrapyard at 2 p.m. She'd found the address for the yard in an old business directory. Peter V was listed as the owner, though the business license had expired in 1996. She'd driven out to the vacant lot. She'd stood in the weeds. She'd realized that if there was an answer to any of this, it would have to be here, at the place where broken things went to die. The massive, rusted black Ford F-150 roared to life from behind a pile of crushed cars. It slammed into her rear bumper with the force of a meteor strike. The impact threw Lucy forward. Her forehead cracked against the steering wheel. Stars exploded across her vision. The sound was catastrophic, tearing metal, the terrible sound of a collision that meant nothing good was coming next. The truck stayed inches from her bumper. The driver's face was obscured by dark tint, impossible to read. Lucy floored the accelerator. Her Volvo fishtailed. Mud sprayed from the tires, coating the windshield, coating everything. The truck's engine roared, getting louder, getting closer. She could see its grille, could see the broken headlights from the impact, could see nothing but the certainty that whoever was driving it wanted her dead or captured or both. Lucy swerved through a narrow gap between two stacks of crushed cars. The truck was too wide. Metal screamed as it impacted the stacks. The cars began to slide, massive rectangles of compressed steel shifting, falling, pinning the truck underneath them with a sound like the end of the world. Dust erupted into the air, a thick cloud that swallowed everything. Lucy didn't stop. She kept driving. She watched in her rearview mirror as a figure in a leather jacket jumped out of the truck's window, shaking a fist. Even at a distance, even through the dust and the shock, she recognized him. Elias, the man from the video. The man with the scar. He was staring at her car as it disappeared down the dirt road, his face a mask of rage and something else. Something that looked like desperation. The Maple Festival was in full swing when Lucy arrived in the town square at 7 p.m. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Festive lights had been strung between the lampposts, tiny white bulbs that glowed against the deepening twilight. People held maple candies and balloons. A local high school band played somewhere on the main stage, the music tinny and bright and completely at odds with the fury burning in Lucy's chest. She saw Tom immediately. He was on a small stage near the gazebo, receiving a plaque from the mayor. Citizen of the Year. The placard read, visible even from where Lucy stood in the crowd. Tom's face was all smiles and humility. His hand rested on his chest as the mayor shook his other hand. He looked like a good man. He looked like a man worth celebrating. Lucy pushed through the crowd. She moved with the single-minded intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose. She stepped onto the stage. The mayor's smile faltered. Tom's face went pale, an immediate, instinctive reaction that told her everything she needed to know about guilt. She pulled out the flash drive, held it up like a weapon, like an accusation, like proof. I know what you did, Tom. Her voice cut through the festival sounds, carried by adrenaline and rage. I know about the motel. I know about the money you gave your brother. The band stopped playing. The crowd went silent. It was the kind of silence that happens when the world tips sideways, when the rules everyone has been following suddenly stop applying. A woman's voice cut through the quiet. Lucy, wait, look at the dates. Lucy turned. A neighbor, Sarah, someone Lucy had seen at the grocery store a dozen times but had never spoken to, was climbing onto the stage. Sarah was holding her phone, her face urgent and afraid and determined all at once. Look. Sarah shoved the phone into Lucy's face. The screen displayed a photograph of Tom sitting in a hospital chair, his arm in a cast, tubes running from his nose. The timestamp on the photo read, March 15th, 8:43 p.m. The video had been filmed on March 15th at 9 p.m. Tom was in two places at once. Or the video was a fake, or everything was something else entirely. Tom collapsed into a chair on the stage. His entire body seemed to deflate. His hands came up to cover his face. He's trying to ruin me, Tom whispered into his hands. His shoulders shook. Elias has always hated me. He's always blamed me for what happened in '08. He's been trying to destroy me for years, and now he's using you to do it. The mayor stepped backward, away from the stage. The crowd had that particular quality of silence that meant everything was changing. Lucy stood there holding the flash drive, surrounded by the lights of the festival, and understood that she had just publicly accused an innocent man of crimes that his own brother had committed. She had just made everything worse. Lucy returned to the bookstore at 10 p.m. The front door was unlocked. She didn't remember leaving it unlocked, but then again, She didn't remember a lot of things clearly anymore. The basement stairs descended into darkness. The back room was cold. She was searching for the original camera box, the mahogany thing with the brass latch, thinking perhaps there was a clue she'd missed, something that would tell her what was really happening and why. That was when she heard the front door chime, followed by the heavy, final click of the deadbolt being locked from the inside. Footsteps began on the floor above her, slow, deliberate, coming toward the basement stairs. Elias descended into the darkness. He was carrying a heavy tire iron. His leather jacket was torn from the junkyard crash, a long rip down the right side revealing the gray shirt underneath. His face was different now. Harder, meaner, all the pretense gone. The scar on his chin seemed to pulse with its own light. "You shouldn't have made a scene, Lucy," he said. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. "Now I have to clean up Tom's mess and yours." Lucy backed away. Her heel caught on a stray book. She fell against a shelf of heavy encyclopedias, a complete set from the 1970s, still in their dust jackets, still smelling like someone's childhood. The shelf groaned under her weight. It began to lean precariously. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. Elias swung the tire iron. It smashed into a wooden pillar next to Lucy's head with a sound like the earth breaking. Splinters exploded into her cheek. The pain was immediate and absolute. She screamed, a raw, terrified sound that echoed off the basement's concrete walls. She grabbed a gallon tub of industrial floor wax. It was heavy, almost impossible to lift, but adrenaline made her strong. She hurled it at Elias's chest. The plastic tub exploded on impact. White, slick liquid erupted everywhere, coating him, coating the floor, turning everything into a skating rink made of chemicals and desperation. Elias slipped. His legs flew out from under him. He hit the floor hard, but as he fell, he grabbed Lucy's ankle, dragging her down with him. They crashed together into the white pool. The fight became primal, grunting, thrashing, both of them covered in the slippery white mess. Lucy kicked him in the face with her heavy work boot. His head snapped back. Blood mixed with the white wax, creating patterns of pink and red across the concrete floor. She scrambled away, but he caught her jacket, his fingers closing around the fabric, pulling, holding. She shed the coat. The jacket came off, leaving her in just her shirt and pants. She sprinted for the stairs. Tom was waiting at the top. He was holding her laptop and the flash drive. He wasn't helping her. He was blocking her exit. His face was calm in a way that told her everything. All the tears on the stage, all the performance, all of it had been exactly that. Performance. "I told him you were too smart, Lucy," Tom said quietly. "I told him the camera trick wouldn't work. But I didn't have a better plan, so here we are." Tom tossed the flash drive into a metal trash can. He poured a bottle of lighter fluid over it. The liquid pooled around the small silver drive. He struck a match. The flame was reflected in his glasses as he watched her face. "The videos were real, Lucy," he said. The fire began to burn, orange and hungry. But they weren't about an affair. They were about the heist we pulled in 2008. Elias was supposed to take the fall. He was supposed to go to prison. He was supposed to disappear from our lives. But he came back. He came back angry, and he's been trying to take everything from us ever since. Now, you're a loose end. Behind Tom, at the bottom of the basement stairs, Lucy could hear Elias's footsteps. Lucy lunged not for the door, but for the main electrical panel behind the counter. Her fingers found the master lever. She slammed it down. The store plunged into total, absolute darkness. The hum of the building died. The refrigeration units in the small cafe corner fell silent. The security lights blinked out. For a moment, there was nothing but black and confusion. Lucy heard Tom curse. She heard Elias's footsteps stop midway up the stairs as his mind tried to catch up with the sudden absence of light. Using her memory of the aisles, she had walked these paths 10,000 times. Lucy moved silently. She was invisible. She reached the Special Collections glass case and found the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She'd shown it to customers during safety tours 100 times. They'd never remembered it. She sprayed it toward the hallway, aiming for where she could hear them. The white chemical fog erupted. The sound was a harsh hiss. She heard coughing, first Tom, then Elias from deeper in the bookstore. Lucy kicked open the back emergency exit. The alarm blared, a piercing, rhythmic shriek that shattered the darkness, turning everything into chaos and noise. She ran into the night, into the cool April air, toward the lights of the town square that flickered in the distance. The police cruiser was parked at the edge of the festival. Lucy reached it, banging her palms on the hood hard enough to leave handprints. The officer jumped out, his hand immediately moving to his holster. Lucy's face was covered in white wax and red blood. Her clothes were torn. She was gasping, barely able to form words. "The bookstore," she managed. "My bookstore. They're coming." The officer was already radioing for backup. Within 90 seconds, 4 police cruisers were screaming toward the bookstore. Tom and Elias emerged from the alley carrying the mahogany box, the original camera box, heavy with whatever contents remained. They ran straight into the focused beams of 4 police flashlights. The brothers froze, the box still in their hands, the night suddenly full of uniform and authority and consequences. "Get down! Hands up!" the officers shouted. Elias dropped the box. It shattered on the wet pavement. The impact split the mahogany perfectly, like the wood had been waiting for this moment all along. Dozens of old, high-denomination $100 bills spilled out. They were beautiful, really. Old-style currency, meticulously preserved, each one worth something, each one representing a crime from 2008 that had taken 16 years to catch up to them. The wind caught the loose bills. They swirled in the night air like confetti, like money falling from the sky, like the end of something that had been dying for a very long time. They scattered across the wet street, disappearing into the darkness. The officers moved in with practiced efficiency. Handcuffs clicked. Tom and Elias were separated, read their rights, placed in different cruisers. By 10:45 p.m., the bookstore alley was empty except for the money, the shattered box, and the echoes of what had happened there. 1 week later, the sun was bright and immediate, and didn't care about anything that had happened. Lucy was sweeping glass from the front of her shop. The town square was quiet in that way small towns could be quiet. The kind of silence that meant everyone knew everything, but nobody was saying anything out loud. She looked at her neighbor's house across the street. It was sealed now with yellow crime scene tape that ran around the perimeter like a quarantine. The house was empty. The golden retriever had been taken to a shelter. The for sale sign had been removed. The house just stood there, waiting for the legal machinery to determine what would happen to it next. The mailman came down the street at his usual time, 10:30 a.m. exactly. He dropped the mail into Lucy's box, bills, advertisements, the usual detritus of modern life. At the bottom of the pile was a single postcard. The picture showed the Vermont mountains at sunset, beautiful and serene and completely generic. Lucy flipped it over. The message was handwritten in blue ink. "Thanks for the assist. They owed me a lot more than just a camera. Peter V." The postage was local. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the handwriting of someone who had taken their time to write the message clearly. Lucy stared at the words. She stared at the signature. She tried to make sense of the sentence. What it meant was, you were never looking for answers. You were being used to expose them. I needed them exposed. You did that. Thank you. What it also meant was, everything that happened was planned. Or at least someone had planned for it to happen. Not the attack on her house, that was improvisation. Not the chase through the junkyard, that was desperation. But the camera, the flash drive, the videos, the careful manipulation of timing and truth and lies. Those had all been arranged with the precision of someone who understood exactly what they were doing. Lucy walked to the edge of her store's front window. She looked down the street, the way you look when you feel like you're being watched. In the distance, a man in a dark hat was just turning the corner. He walked with the kind of stride that suggested he'd been thinking about something important. The hat was pulled low. His face was completely obscured. Then he was gone. The corner swallowed him. He ceased to exist. Lucy folded the postcard. She put it in her pocket. She went back to sweeping the glass, the silver shards that caught the light, and threw it back, each one small and sharp and beautiful in its own way. The bookstore was still there. The shelves were still full. The stories were still waiting. The floor was clean now, swept of glass and wax and the physical evidence of what had happened. Outside, Maple Street continued its quiet life. The festival was over. The police had their criminals. The evidence was filed away in boxes marked Evidence Number 1 through Evidence the 34. Lucy swept. The broom moved in steady, rhythmic motions. Sweep, 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 sweep. The broken world kept its distance, at least for today. Tomorrow would come, and the day after that, and the day after that. The postcard was in her pocket, a weight she would carry, a message from someone who had orchestrated everything, or almost everything, and then stepped back into the shadows, leaving only a signature and a town full of unanswered questions. She swept the last of the glass into a pile. She pushed it into the dustpan. The sun was bright on Maple Street. The day was beautiful in that way. Early spring could be beautiful, full of potential and renewal, and the sense that something fundamental had shifted beneath the surface of things. Lucy stood in her bookstore doorway, looking out at the street where her neighbor used to walk his golden retriever. She stood there for a long time, not moving, just standing. Then she went back inside and locked the door behind her. The shop was quiet. It smelled like paper and dust and the particular scent of old things. The inventory was waiting. The customers would start arriving in a few hours, looking for their stories, their escapes, their truths bound in leather and cardboard. Lucy would stand behind the counter and ring up their purchases and make small talk about the weather. She would not mention the flash drive, or the videos, or the man in the dark hat who had disappeared around the corner, or the carefully written message still pressed against her hip in the pocket of her jeans. She would just keep the bookstore open, day after day, watching the street, waiting for the man with the dark hat to come back, or hoping he never would. It was impossible to know which. The morning light fell across the floor in long golden rectangles. The bookstore was full of stories. Lucy stood in the middle of them, surrounded by thousands of narratives written by other people, and understood that she had just become part of a story too. One that didn't have an ending yet. One that might never have an ending. One that would continue in the spaces between moments, in the silence between the questions and the answers that never quite arrived. She turned away from the window. She walked toward the back room, toward the desk where the mahogany box had sat a week ago. Empty now, its contents seized by police and cataloged and filed away. She sat down. She opened her laptop. The screen flickered to life. There were emails waiting, Customers asking about book orders, suppliers sending invoices. The ordinary machinery of ordinary life, turning as it always did, as if nothing had happened at all. She began to type a response to the first email. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the kind of muscle memory that didn't require her to think about what she was doing. She was here. She was present. She was alive and intact and sitting in her bookstore on a beautiful day in April with no immediate threats and no immediate answers. That would have to be enough. That would have to be everything. Outside, the wind picked up. It moved through the branches of the maple trees that lined Maple Street, carrying the scent of spring and the sound of something ending and something else beginning. The breeze rattled the bookstore's front door, a soft, insistent sound, like someone asking to be let inside. Lucy looked up from her laptop, but there was no one there. There was only the empty street, the quiet town, the yellow crime scene tape visible across the way, and the sense that the story wasn't over. Not really. Not for her. The breeze died. The street was silent. Lucy returned to her email. The day continued. End.